Okay, and welcome to another video. Again, this is the second time I've recorded this. I forgot to bring the microphone in, so it's over there, but yeah. So here we go. First of all, thank you, and I'm repeating all the things I've just said. Thank you for all the support you gave me while I had the flu. Almost over it, still not sleeping properly, but I had a very eventful day today. I managed to get out and visit some new locations and done quite a lot of filming. Actually visited, well, 3 in total, including the one that we're going to look at today. I didn't actually stop at this location that we're covering. It's only a house in the street, so there's not really much to see. This is about Poltergeist in Dartford. Now, if you look up Dartford, which is literally the other side of Thurrock, and you go to the Dartford Bridge, you'll find stories about poltergeists in council houses, and this was in sort of the 80s, late 80s. Now, these happened after the film Poltergeist come out, which came out in 82, or 83 actually, I think 82, 83, 82 come out. Now, this one we're talking about today actually happened in 1981, before the Poltergeist film come out and made these things sort of more popular. And I think that's quite important to put some weight behind their experiences as a family. What we have is that this family experienced over a period of months some, I guess, terrifying events. I was lucky enough to do some research for ghost towns. This was back quite a few years ago. And during that time, while I was doing the research for the Fobbing one, I got to know one of the researchers there, and he was doing the research for events in Dartford. They were covering another location. They had done the research for Most Haunted there for the library, at Dartford Library, which is haunted. I may do a separate video on that. But this one today is just a standard house in a standard street. He put me in contact with the person involved. His name was Alex, and Alex was able to fill in some of the gaps that the researcher didn't tell me at the time. So this video is the Poltergeist of Dartford. What we have is a standard family in 1981, which is Alex and Pauline Gainsborough. I believe their last name is Gainsborough. I may have got that wrong. It's probably due to my handwriting back then, and still now my handwriting's terrible. And they have 2 children, Christopher and Kelly. Christopher is 9 and Kelly is 12. Now, these events started to happen quite quickly and quite dramatically, but at the same time, not directly with the children first of all, but they started off with Alex. Alex was a training doctor or nurse back in 1981, and on a normal day, he's standing in his kitchen in a nice private house. You'll find that a lot of these poltergeist activities happen in council houses. And the one in Dartford that you'll mainly see is where a family were being terrorised in a council house and they end up being moved out of their house by the council. And then later on you find out that their neighbours were having the same issues where books and items were being thrown in the house and they get moved as well. Again, that was after the Poltergeist film came out in the cinemas over here, so we're focusing in 1981 before that film came out. So Alex and Pauline live in Dartford, and if you don't know Dartford that well, it is just east of London and to the south of London, to be truthful. Now, we get to it from here. For me, it's only a 20-minute drive, less than that really. Depends what the traffic like is going over the Dartford Bridge. Today I got stuck in traffic coming back. I visited 2 locations on the south of the river today that are coming up in later videos. I did put a little teaser in one of the shorts on YouTube for that one. Dartford has got not a dark history, but there was some rumours of play pits found around Dartford, and they tried to link that with some of the events that have happened with the Dartford Library and some of those poltergeist activities. There's also this thought that the road that was a pilgrim road that come down from the north went through Dartford down towards Canterbury, where like the Pilgrim's Trail, and also is an important site to stop when they cross the river with maybe important people's bodies that they'll be bringing back after execution that were going to be buried at Canterbury Cathedral. But Alex, again, as I say, he's just a standard person living in a standard house. Again, he was also private. He's in his kitchen doing the washing up, and he's just sort of having a dream moment while he's doing the washing up and just staring out the window, when he noticed that there was a lady in a white dress with long black hair standing by the fish pond. And this all happened in a matter of seconds. These thoughts were like a really quick thought in his head. He thought, what's that woman doing in my garden? He goes, what's she doing by my fish pond? Hold on, I ain't got a fish pond. And as he thought that, the lady vanished. He's like, what did I just see? It's like, I so nearly hit my head on that shelf thing. And he had a ZX Spectrum fall on top of me. And he said, no, this just vanished. And he stood back and he was like, wow, what was that? He goes, am I daydreaming? I'm just like going into like a dream in my head. And he puts his hands back in, carried on doing the washing up. And again, this vision in his garden appeared. But this time, the lady snapped her head and looked straight at Alex. He jumped and grabbed hold of the knife that he was holding in his hand and quite badly cut into his hand. He's standing there looking at this vision, and then she slowly faded away. Then he realised what he'd actually done and how bad he'd cut his hand. And again, another reason why men shouldn't do the washing up. I need to chop my finger off by doing the washing up, and we're not skilled enough to do that. Now, I was cleaning a plate and I dropped it in one of those Brita beans. No, like they've all fad. Everyone's got to have a Brita bean, 50 litre Brita bean. I dropped a plate and it smashed on it as I tried to catch it. Literally dropped through my tendons and everything. I had to have it all stitched back up, and yeah, quite ironic. If that hadn't happened, I probably wouldn't have been doing what I've been doing for about the last 15 years. Because due to that, I read the book Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway while I was trained to be doing mental health things. It made me quit my job right off and become self-employed, and everything just led to what it's all led to. So yeah, maybe we should be doing the washing up more, and like, you know, events happen. Sidetracked everything, and I didn't do that in the first take of this, so yeah, just your mind goes over, doesn't it? So I'm getting lost. Right, back to Alex, who's just cut his hand. He staggers back, his hand's quite bleeding quite bad. Pauline hears him gasp and comes into the kitchen, and she goes, what you done? He goes, oh, I've just sliced my hand with a knife. And she looks at him and she goes, oh, it's bad, but not too bad. You know, don't need stitches. But it's bleeding quite a lot, mainly because he'd had his hands in hot water and, you know, blood flows quicker and all that. So it didn't look good. And he goes, I've just seen something in the garden that a bit bizarre. And she goes, what's that? He goes, well, I was just looking out the window. He goes, and I see a lady in our garden. What's she doing in our garden? He goes, yeah, not just that. He goes, we had a pond in our garden. He goes, we ain't got a pond. He went, I know. He's like, but this vision was what I see. He goes, then it faded out. And she, you're going a bit crazy. He goes, you're daydreaming. She goes, get some more sleep. And nothing was really fault of it, much more than that. Carried on then all day. But the next day, you've got Pauline is in the kitchen, in the same kitchen, and she's doing the hand washing. Now, this is 1981, and we didn't all have tumble dryers and washing machines and all that. Actually, we did, but we had a washing machine back then, I think. Yeah, I think we did. Actually, it was a top loader one that you put the washing in and did. But she's in there doing the washing in the sink, and the steam was started going up the window. And in that steam, as she's staring out the window, a figure like a stick man formed in front of her, and she watched it being drawn in front of her face. Now, she said it wasn't quite a stick man. She goes, it looked like it was the closest thing she could explain it to be, but it was like this figure that she thought looked like a stick man. She actually screamed, and Alex came in from behind, and she said what she'd seen, and she goes, what are you going on about? She goes, I've just seen a stick man figure in the window, in the mist, drawing in front of me. He goes, maybe it's the kids outside drawing on a window. She goes, no, the kids are upstairs. She goes, it's not them. And she goes, it was drawn on the inside and it just faded. He goes, now you're daydreaming looking out the window. Now you had to go at me for it. Now you're doing it. The next day, again, nothing happened. Late that night, Alex is upstairs. Now do you remember the old shaving blocks? You used to have the bristle pads. I guess you still use it now, don't you? I mean, shaving foam or I've got an electric razor, so I don't do that. But remember, my dad used to have those bristle ones, and he's sitting there bristling up his brushes to put the cream on his face, and the steam was going up against his shaving mirror when this figure started to draw on the shaving mirror in front of him. He stood back and he thought, blimey, Pauline was telling the truth. I've just seen the same thing. But he decides not to tell Pauline this and keeps it to himself for quite some time. Over the next few days, nothing really tends to happen. And then we've got the son Christopher. Now, Christopher is 9 and Kelly is 12. A lot of these paranormal events tend to happen around children of that age, in a house like that. Now, Christopher is out in the garden and he's got the swing ball set. Now, swing ball, if you don't know what that is, it was a post with a ball on a string and you knock it round the post and who gets it to the top wins. He's out there playing on his own, and he's knocking it around. When he looks up to the window, and he sees a figure standing at the bathroom window, and he describes it with long black hair, wearing a white dress. He first of all thinks it was his mum, but then looks down and his mum's at the kitchen window. He knows it's not his sister because the shape's too tall for his sister. Now, back when the researcher told me this story and I was able to contact Alex, I wish I'd asked him a question. I wanted to know now, was that window a frosted window or was it a clear window? I want to know how much detail that Christopher see of this lady. Does it match the description of what Alex see in the garden? This lady seems to be quite integral to what is going on in the house. Christopher runs in, tells his mum. The mum is a little bit creeped out because she knows what Alex has seen in the garden. She goes upstairs to make sure it's not the sister. She's not there. She enters the bathroom and there's quite a lot of water over the bathroom floor. And in the big bathroom mirror is this figure drawn in the steam on it again. This was quite disturbing for her. Now, first of all, she thought maybe it was these daydreaming stuff going on. Now her son has seen this, and again they've come up here and see this shape in the mirror. They don't really understand what it was. Now, the researcher at the time told me that he thought it may be a pagan symbol. I've looked, and maybe you can help me, any sort of symbols that look like that. It's sort of like a stick man figure, but not a stick man, and not much to go on, but that's what the only words I wrote down at the time is how it was described to me. What Alex said is that around about this time, Christopher had become quite withdrawn within himself. He was normally quite a brash, loud kid, but certain things happened that sort of changed the way Christopher behaved, and his behaviour became a little bit testing. But we had one where Kelly had an experience. Now, Christopher and Kelly had a fight in the house, and Kelly had punched Christopher quite severely, and Christopher fallen over and cut his arm. Now this is brother and sister fighting. Me and my sister used to fight all the time. Yeah, we don't know more. She lives in New Zealand, so it's a bit hard, isn't it? But we used to fight, and over silly things as well. You know what it's like when you've got brother and sister, or two brothers. They just constantly fight. And my kids do. I've got 12 and a 20-year-old. Big age gap. But they still fight. they still fight. It's ridiculous. But going back to this, Kelly and Christopher had quite a bad fight. Both got sent to their rooms. Kelly wakes up about 12 o'clock at night, saying that her bed is full of worms. She said that she was sleeping, and all of a sudden she felt like she was sliding around in the bed. And when she pulled back the bed covers, it was covered in worms. She runs out of the bedroom into Alex and Pauline's room, screaming hysterically, saying that there's worms in her bed. They go into her bedroom and there's nothing there at all, absolutely nothing. They tell her that she's having a nightmare and that it's just a dream. She goes back in there, looks, there's nothing there. This is probably a dream or a nightmare. She agrees to lay down, goes back to sleep. Literally 20 minutes later, she is woken up by the feeling of things crawling over her. She puts her hands in her hair and she pulls out some worms. She runs into the bedroom again, saying she's got worms in her hair. Alex and Pauline are like, it's a dream, it's a nightmare. They turn the light on and Kelly has got quite a few worms in her curly hair, and they're pulling these worms out of her hair. First thought was of Pauline and Alex was that Christopher had done this as a joke to get his own back on his sister, which I wouldn't put that past a brother to do that to a sister. Sort of that vindictive payback that sort of went on in families and probably still does today. But they went into Christopher's room. Christopher's sound asleep. And they did think that maybe he'd gone out and got it and planted it in there earlier. And maybe it was a few that were already in the hair. And subconsciously she was dreaming about it. And that's why she thought she was covered in them. But she felt them in her sleep. And that's what triggered it. Quite a rational explanation, I think. And now Alex said that that's what he, not that he still believes because of everything else, but that's what he believed at the time. Again, there was a period of time before the next thing happened, and this was Pauline was out in the garden and she's putting the washing out on the line. It was one of those rotary washing lines. She's standing there spinning it around, putting the clothes on it, when she notices that there's a figure standing just behind the washing line. She moves to the side and looks round and sees this figure of this lady in a white dress and long black hair, very, very pale, washed out features of her face and quite wrinkled. First of all, though, this is a bright, sunny day. This was a real solid figure standing there. And she walks round and she shouts out, "Excuse me." And the lady turns her head and looks at Pauline and then vanishes. Pauline's completely freaked. She runs indoors. She had to wait for Alex to come home from work, and as soon as he comes home from work, she tells him what she sees. Alex going, "That sounds exactly like what I see in the garden." And they're like, "Well, what is going on?" Then they're not into paranormal or ghost stuff like that. They go to the Catholic Church, and he said, "I'm going to speak to the local priest." He does. He speaks to the local priest, and the local priest goes, "Well, maybe there's something going on in your house, so make time, schedule, I'll come around and bless your house for you." This will put Alex's fears to rest. And that weekend, they're planning to have one of Christopher's friends come over and stay. Now, Christopher's friend, they'd had a few troubles at school with him, but they did sort of get on. Unfortunately, when the boy came to stay with Christopher, all evening they were fighting, and it got to the stage where Christopher's friend pushed him and he fell over and Christopher hit his head. And that was enough for Pauline and Alex, and they contacted the family and said, "You know what, the boys are not getting on. We'll do it another night, but can you come around and collect him?" And they agreed, "Yeah, no, that's fine." Christopher was a bit upset that his friend was going home, but at the same time, while he was waiting, his friend started punching him again, and that was sort of like, "No, I'm glad you're going home." Christopher came downstairs and they waited for the family to turn up to pick up the boy. The family turn up, they open up the front door, they let him in, they call the boy down. Now, as the boy gets to the top of the stairs, he says he was pushed. They say he looked like he either jumped or tripped, but he tumbled down the stairs and broke his arm. This starts a little bit of a ball rolling where things that happen to Christopher tend to have repercussions for other people. Chris decided to believe that something was protecting him in that house. one of the examples Alex gave me, he was having a go at Christopher one day for badly behaving. And as he left the room, he trod on a Lego brick. Now that Lego brick, he swears, wasn't there beforehand, but in the middle of the hallway, he treads on this Lego brick, and as if it was like payback for having to go at Christopher. Pauline was downstairs and they was having dinner. Now back then, it was very common not to be able to leave the table till you finished your dinner. Christopher was kicking off because he wasn't allowed to leave the table. And Pauline was having a go at him. He was back chatting Pauline, and she turned around and said a verbal punishment to him, something like, Alex can't really remember, he said something like, "You're not going to be able to play out," or something like that. As she said that, she bit down and broke her tooth in half. These sort of things went on quite a lot within the household. So even Kelly said that when she used to fight with her brother, quite often, almost immediately, there's some sort of payback in her getting hurt or something bad would happen to her. So Christopher started feeling a little bit protected by other people that were not within the house. And it had a bit of a withdrawing effect on him. He sort of really started to sink inside himself. Then we had another night where the family were going out, but due to bad behaviour of the kids, they decided they would get a babysitter and they would go out themselves. Now they were going to the greyhound racing at Crayford. I think that's where it used to be. I do remember going banger racing there as a kid with my dad. My dad used to race over there. And I do remember coming back with his race car and we broke down the Dartford tunnel. Remember that, and my family remember that. But they decided they wouldn't get a babysitter. The babysitter turned up. Now she was 16, which was quite common back then. You'd get the older kid in the neighbourhood to look after your kids, and they'd give them a few quid while you go out. He said, "Don't worry, no, they will go to sleep quite early." Christopher went to sleep about 9 and Kelly went up about 10, which was quite good because it meant that the babysitter could sit there and just chill out. This is where we get the first report of a red mist. This is where the babysitter was sitting in the living room and the telly started turning on and off. She was getting up, turning it on, and then it'd turn off again. She'd get up and turn it on again. But these were the button type ones, so you push the button in and then she'd sit down and the button would pop out and the telly would turn off. And she'd done this quite a few times before deciding that the telly must be playing up and left it. So she leans over and grabs a newspaper. She's sitting in the chair holding the newspaper up when she feels the newspaper being dragged out of her hands. As it's dragged out of her hands, she looks up, and from the kitchen at the other end of the room, there's this red mist coming out of the kitchen. And she said it had sort of like a smoky, choky sort of smell to it. And so it wasn't like it wasn't a smoke and it wasn't like a mist. It was just there. She goes, she can't quite describe exactly what it was. There was just this red, I guess, mist in the air that she could see, smell and taste. She gets up and walks to the kitchen to see if it's coming from the kitchen. She gets to the kitchen door and looks in, and all the cupboards in the kitchen, all the doors start banging in front of her. This, quite rightly, scares the life out of her. So much so that she actually leaves the house with the front door open and runs off home. Pauline and Alex come back from greyhound racing, turn up at the house, and their front door's wide open. They run in thinking that something's wrong. They go through the house and the kids are asleep in bed. Alex jumps in his car, drives round to where the babysitter lives, knocks on the door. The babysitter's dad answers the door, goes, "Your daughter's just abandoned my kids, left my front door open." The dad rips into Alex, goes, "Are you seeing the state of my daughter? She's in here in absolute hysterics. She's saying your ass is on me. She's saying that there's something creepy going on in your ass. Are your kids playing a joke on her? Are they winding her up?" He looks at the babysitter and she's in a complete state. And Alex said that she has snot come down her face, tears, everything. She looked absolutely petrified. Alex apologises and said he's going to go back and talk to the kids and gives her the money for what she was meant to have anyway, leaves and goes back home. He wakes the children up and they go, "Don't know what you're talking about, Dad. We went to bed, don't know nothing about it." And that was sort of like, they put that to bed. They couldn't answer what was said to happen. Now, when the babysitter told them all this stuff that's happening, they'd not heard of anything like that in the house at all, up to that point. We move up to come towards the Christmas period now. Now, Kelly was obviously 12 years old. She'd had some of her friends around the house. And while they were in the living room, she went to get some drinks in the kitchen. As she walks into the kitchen, she describes a lady in a white dress with long black hair standing in the middle of the kitchen. This caught Kelly by surprise and she gave out a little scream. One of Kelly's friends come round the corner to see what it was. To see Kelly standing there open-mouthed in front of this lady. So this is two kids that see this lady standing in the kitchen. The lady disappears. Pauline comes in to see what's going on. The friend turns around and says, "We just see a ghost in your kitchen of a lady in a white dress and long black hair." That freaks Pauline out because this matches the figures that they've seen in the past. The kid turns around and laughs about it and says, "Oh, your house is haunted." Kelly gets picked on a little bit at school because they say her house is now like the ghost house. It doesn't really go down well for Kelly, and being picked on at school is never a nice thing. So much so that she takes a few days off school. On one of the days off school, she's sitting at home and she's doing some drawing in the living room. She goes into what her mum says is like a blank space and draws this big shape of this lady with the black hair and the white dress. But she draws a fish pond next to it, or a pond next to it. And in the pond is very, very red, like red blood. Alex and Pauline question her about it. And she said, "I don't know." She goes, "I was just drawing and just anything that comes to my head." And this came into my head, the lady that we see. And I go, "What about the fish pond?" And she goes, "I don't know, I just added it in." And Alex said it's very much the shape of the pond that he see. Because it wasn't a complete pond that he see. It was sort of almost like the edge of a larger pond, but there's an edge of it in his garden. This made Alex go to the council and find out if there had been a pond built in that area. And apparently, yes. That ground where their house was built was an open farmland at one point, and there were more like cattle ponds around the area where they'd fill up, or the rain would fill up, and the cattle would come up and drink out of them. Also, that is when he found out that there may have been a plague pit or bodies found buried around the area where their house is built. We are talking more Ebbsfleet side of Dartford. So I'm not going to go into the full detail of their address. So I drove down the road today and there's some roadworks going on now. And I didn't think nothing of it, to be truthful. It just looks like a standard house. And it's the same as Enfield. When you drive through the Enfield Poltergeist house, there's nothing unusual about it. Nothing stands out about it. And I guess that's what makes it more interesting, that these events happen in houses like that. Now, this one is a completely detached house, so it's slightly different to the Enfield houses, like semi-detached. But again, you just drive past it not knowing the history. Very much like Abbott's Drive. If you go back in my videos of Abbott's Drive, just up the road from me, the amount of stories that have come out since I'd done that video, the amount of people from Abbott's Drive that have contacted me and told me either their experiences now or in the past, and people that used to live there have definitely been contacting me telling me their past experiences. It's quite interesting. You get certain roads that have a history like this. Now, looking at this road in Ebbsfleet, Dartford, it doesn't stand out as anything different from anywhere else. But for Pauline and Alex, things just continue to go on. I was going to use the word snowball, but being as the next story involves sort of like winter, it'll sound a bit stupid. But Alex comes out in the morning to get into his car, and on the window in the ice is this symbol scraped out in the ice. Again, of course, Alex is a little bit taken back by this, but can't do nothing about it. Gets in the car, drives off to work. Pauline is at home. The kids have gone off to school. She's there and she starts doing the hoovering. She hoovers the living room. Do you remember the shake and vac? We put the freshness back. She sprinkles this on the floor. As she sprinkles it on the floor, it forms the shape of this figure. Now, she says that she didn't do this on purpose. She says she just threw it out onto their carpet. But where it laid, she could see this figure in it. Now, I know what you can say. Your mind, if you've got a shape in your mind can play tricks on you, and you can see those shapes anywhere. I mean, I'm not even kidding you. In my bathroom and downstairs, in the bathroom, I can make R2-D2 out of the pattern on the floor, and downstairs I can make Darth Vader and Chewbacca out of the shapes on the floor. And it's just how our minds work. Not that I'm obsessed with Darth Vader and Star Wars and all that sort of stuff. I'm making a TIE Fighter pilot's helmet, and I think I'm going to stick it either there or there when I've finished it. Sidetracking again. But no, I weren't going to cover this story as soon as I have, but because I was driving through the location today, over the last few days, I was thinking I'm going to cover it. Then I was watching That Chapter podcast, and Mike covers a bit about poltergeists at the beginning of the episode, and just felt like it was the right time to talk about it. I've been putting it off, and I got the flu and didn't want to go out and do anything, and I didn't have the oomph to cover this story because I didn't want to forget stuff that Alex had told me and the researcher told me. My notes are not the best notes, and my handwriting back then is terrible. I say it's still terrible, but I wanted to do it justice because it just kept getting worse and worse for the family. Things just like deteriorated. Their relationships were falling apart in the house. Now, it wasn't as if a lot of activity was going on, but the atmosphere was getting quite negative and bitter. They was finding they was arguing a lot over not very big things. Just little things would start big arguments. Now, Kelly was getting more argumentative with the parents. Christopher felt that he was protected by everybody and almost felt like he had a bit of a power over them. Alex kept having these weird things of signs and all that being seen over the house. Pauline was having these strange experiences that she couldn't really work out what was going on. And it was all getting a bit much. Alex then went back to the priest, and the priest said, okay, I will actually come round myself and bless the house now. So the priest walks in, doesn't get any further than the entrance, and says, this is too much for me. I'm going to need other people. I'll get back in touch with you. This just completely throws Alex and Pauline. They're strong members of the Catholic Church. This leaves them feeling unsafe. Alex's words are, it left him feeling unsafe in his house and scared for what could happen to the children. That very night, things escalated quite a lot. They were sitting in the back of the living area where they'd eat their food. All of them heard a bang in the living room. They turned around and they looked, and they said they could see almost like a see-through figure of that lady with the white dress and the black hair passing through their living room. At the same time, the cupboard doors in the kitchen started banging. They didn't bang a lot, but it was enough to frighten the family. Chris and Kelly see it. They were freaking out. The banging has scared them even more. They exited into the garden and stood there looking back at the house. Kelly says that she could see the figure in their mum and dad's bedroom looking out the window, and describes again the same lady that had just seen walking through the living room. Pauline comes out. Again, she's shaken. The only person left in the house is Alex. Alex goes to leave the house when the front door slams in front of him. He's having a battle to get out of the house. As he said, as he's pulling on the door, the force is equal to him. So it's like a tug of war going on with the door. Suddenly he just lets go and he falls back, but then he manages to go out into the garden. He finds his family all standing there looking up at the bedroom window. And they said the bedroom window, behind it is very, very dark, but at the front of the window, almost like there's a light shining on her, was this figure of this lady in a white dress with black hair and an incredibly pale featured face. Slowly that image fades off. It leaves the whole family shaken. They get together back in the house and they're saying to the kids, no, we're going to sort this out. They are, as I say, a strong Catholic church going family. Said that they will be looked after, that the priests are dealing with it. The family, the kids, trust that that is going to be happening. So they do go to bed. Luckily, nothing happens over the next few days. It's actually the Christmas period. But the day after Boxing Day, the family are in the living room and they've got friends over. Now, they've done some food and this gets a little bit gross. They're all sitting down ready to eat this food when their friend gives out a shriek. And she goes, there's worms on the table. They look down at the food and scattered around the table, around all the food, is worms. Alex reckons there's probably about 20-25 worms on the table. They look at Christopher. Straight off, they're looking at him to blame him. He is as freaked out as they are. Kelly is done a runner. It just reminds her of what's happened to her. The friends literally do blame Christopher, saying that your son's done that and he's sick. He shouldn't be doing that. There's something wrong with him. This causes a bit of an argument between the friends, but they put it aside and they go back into the living room, play some games and try and put it behind them. And Pauline goes up, clears the table off, cleans everything, and then brings some of the food back into the living room where they sit down and eat it. They're sitting there playing these games when items in the living room start being thrown across the room, flying across the room. Alex says flying across the room. He said he witnessed a book from his book stand at the end of the room come off the shelf and zoom across the living room. He said not thrown, but it flew across the living room and hit the wall on the other side. The friends turned around and looked. The lady turned around and said, we're calling it night, we're going. They still think that the family may be playing tricks on them, or Christopher is playing tricks on them, and this is a little bit too much for them. Alex and Pauline see their friends out and saying, easiest explanation is, yeah, let's just blame it on Christopher. We don't want to go into detail on what was going on. So they apologised for Christopher's behaviour. The family went off thinking that it was all Christopher's fault. They turn their back, go back into the living room, just in time to see the vase on the side of the mantelpiece fly off across the room and smash on the other side. At the same time, they duck as a candle comes across the living room and smashes behind the head. They and I feel like they're being attacked in their own house. Alex and Pauline grab the kids and head upstairs. Alex goes down after about 20 minutes and everything's totally quiet in the house. Me, I'm thinking myself, I'd be out of there by now. I'd be gone. Now that's enough. I've probably been gone before that. this seems to be dragging on and they're not reacting how I think you should react. And I said to Alex this, so why wasn't you leaving? Why didn't you go? And he's going, because I trusted it. I don't think I was ever in danger. But, and I'm going, but you've got things flying around you. You've got kids there. At one point, you think you're in danger. He goes, but you say that now because you've seen all these other horror films and all this sort of stuff. He goes, back then, we didn't know nothing. We didn't really believe in anything like that. He goes, we just thought this was like a ghost that was going on. They do go to bed. They don't get to sleep for a few hours when they hear everything in the house banging. Alex and Pauline get up, go out onto the landing. Christopher comes out, Kelly comes out of their bedrooms, and as they get onto the landing, every door starts banging upstairs. They look out and the windows in their bedrooms are now opening up and shutting and banging. Now these are the ones with the old metal catches that you used to turn over and put them on the two little holes that you used to open the window with. They're all blowing open and banging. He goes downstairs, their front door is opening up and banging. They walk into the living room, everything in there is flying around. The chair at the other end of the room is upside down. They go towards the kitchen and all the cupboards in the kitchen are all banging. They get together and they leave the house. They drive to the priest's house. They knock on his door. Now we're talking early hours of the morning now. The priest says, okay, stay here. He goes to the house, comes back and says, stay here. I'm going to make some phone calls. The family spend the rest of the evening there and the morning there. The next day, they headed off to Pauline's parents. This was still during the Christmas holiday period and they weren't actually at work. Pauline is really suffering mentally with all this going on. And I guess she would do. The priest comes back and said that he's got people coming down. They're going to help him resolve the situation. A few hours, or more than a few hours, go past, Alex says. And then the priest goes out, said these people have arrived. Can he escort them to the premises? Alex takes them towards the house. They walk into the house. As Alex walks into that house, he sees this red mist for the first time himself. And in that red mist, he can make out this lady standing right at the back of his living room. And this red mist is sort of like swirling around her. The priest acknowledges that he can see something and asks Alex to leave. Alex leaves and sits in the car. A couple of hours go past and the priest and these other people leave the premises. They tell Alex that they've removed something evil from inside the house and everything now will be at peace. And yes, there's no more reported occurrences in that house. Nothing more happened. Unfortunately for Pauline, all this has been a little bit too much and it did affect her mental health long term. And she had a nervous breakdown. Back then, obviously, it was treated with different type of medication to what you treat on now. But she ended up suffering with her nerves for quite a long time and still probably does today. I don't think you'd ever get over something that bad. Now, they did live in that house for quite a few years after, but eventually did move away. And that's where the research came in and he contacted them once they'd moved away. So I was grateful for him for the work he'd done, because it just fits in more. No, he knew what I was doing. Back then I was gathering local stories and we're putting them on the Thurrock Paranormal website, and I did do a little piece on this back then. We are moving forward to the conclusion of this story, but it's important to know that we have lots of reports of poltergeist activity around the area in Dartford. And this was the first one, if you go by the timeline. A lot of those happened, as I say, after the Poltergeist film happened. I believe Alex and Pauline suffered something in that house. Was it paranormal? Or did they have badly behaved kids that were pretending that something was going on? That they could stage a lot of this? I don't think so. I do believe they believe what they see. Now, listening to Alex back then, I do remember thinking, now this guy is convinced that this was real. You can never rule out the fact that they're making it all up, okay? Let's be truthful. You will get people who will make up everything. I don't know if Alex is that person. The researcher who spent a lot more time with Alex and going around there and visiting and talking, he was convinced it was real. But like me, he was working on a TV show that definitely wasn't putting the truth over neither. Which is the reason why I stopped doing all that sort of stuff. It's a tricky one. But this is turning out to be a longer video than what I planned it to be. Again, thank you for your support. We're so close to 3,000 subscribers now. I know what you keep saying. Oh, why aren't your video going more viral? Why aren't you getting more subscribers? I don't know. YouTube don't like me. I don't know. You know, I was going to say something rude then, but you get little videos go out there and they go viral. I mean, now you've got Facebook and YouTube pumping out all these AI videos. They're just going to be AI speaking voices, and well, at least they pronounce their words better than me, won't they? So anyway, thank you for support. If you like it, share it, and we've got some great videos coming up anyway. So I'll see you in the next one. Bye.